right, got you. Oh, got you. Oh, you're still alive. Come on. Jesus. All right.
So as you guys know, I've been playing a lot of Half-Life Alyx recently on my Oculus Rift S, playing it right here, actually, in this space, and trying not to bash into things. It's a fairly contained space that I have here, and there are lots of different objects in the way that I could bash into. I've streamed a little bit of this, so thank you to everybody that's jumped on the stream to watch me play a little bit of this game, and I'm happy to report that this game does deliver probably the highest fidelity VR experience that I've ever encountered. It just wasn't always completely working for me and as fun as I hoped it would be. When they showed off trailers of you being able to kind of use your hands and gingerly work your way through all kinds of objects on shelving and sort of be very precise about the different elements that you were going to interact with in the environments, my mind was blown, and that's precisely what Valve has delivered here. This is a game that is a showcase for the technology and the immersion of VR. The writing is so good. Alyx Vance has got to be one of the bravest heroes I've ever played. She's so, she gets confronted by just these nightmares over and over again, and she's just like, oh, okay, all right, brush that off. Where do I gotta go? I gotta save my dad. I gotta keep going here. And she gets into some really incredible situations, and I loved the way that all of the story was painted and fleshed out, and the mysterious characters and creatures that you'll encounter along the way are wonderful. Rhys Darby plays Russell he's the guy from Flight of the Conchords. He's hilarious.
Not necessarily.
And the other incredible mechanic too is these gravity gloves, the Russells that Russell calls them, that allow you to kind of flip and lift different objects that might be far away from you and grab them in your hands, which is awesome. So you're out of bullets and you're looking around the environment, you see a clip over there and you just tug with your gravity gloves and you grab it, and then suddenly it's in your hand and you can clip it into your gun and you can shoot out the bad guys. All of that stuff is super cool. It's not as run and gun and shooter-y as playing something even as classic as the original Half-Life 2 or its subsequent episodes. This is a much more methodical game, and certainly there was a methodology to the way that you approached experiences and confrontations in Half-Life. There always has been that, and so it extrapolates on that. But it's more about you get into a lot of one-to-one battles or one-against-4 battles or something like that. It doesn't really escalate where you're feeling completely surrounded and you feel like a badass because you're able to shoot over there and then over there and over there. This is a resource-aware experience, so you constantly need to know how many bullets you have in your backpack, and the environment around you need to be constantly aware of what might reveal some extra ammo for you or some kind of health syringe or something like that.
Is this medicine?
Does it have a skull and crossbones on it?
I don't see one.
Probably medicine then.
For the most part, what you're doing in this game is it's exploratory, and you are dealing every once in a while with a pretty sensational confrontation, some kind of escalated, heightened horror movie type moment. But, for big chunks of it, you are just sort of activating switches and pushing things and moving things over and beefing up your ammo, and you'll be able to find all of these kind of sci-fi 3D printers where you'll be able to use the resin that you've collected, stick your weapons into a machine, and it will augment it with laser sights or better optical sensors or something like that. Eventually, if you get enough resin, you'll get, the ability to carry more ammo in your weapons. But you're constantly losing ammo, and you're constantly in need of more ammo, and then when you do get into those situations where you have a moment of being surrounded by 3 or 4 of these mutated creatures or some Combine soldiers coming in at you, it gets incredibly tense and frustrating.
Did I get you? Yes, I did. Got you, little fuckers.
Here's where I started to kind of... It started to not be that fun for me, because as slick and fun and cool as it is to, as a VR showcase, and it certainly is, it's state of the art for what VR kind of provides. I find it more fun to just play a shooter the way that I'm familiar with, or even a Resident Evil type game. This is very analogous to the Resident Evil type of experience, because I'm not confronted with the limitations that I may have in this world. I'm very familiar with the mechanics of most shooters that I play, whether it's The Division or Resident Evil or Call of Duty or whatever. I can jump into those worlds and I can figure it all out. Now, I'm also very familiar with the actual real world and being able to walk around and pick up an action figure and put down an action figure and pick up my mouse and pick up my microphone. VR, as exemplified by this wonderful, wonderful, unforgettable game, is not that. It's a hybrid. It's a mix of what we know from shooters and first-person, experiences in traditional video games and what we know from the real world. And it's not as effortless and seamless a crystallization of either of those. So consequently, I felt like a clumsy goof when I was in the middle of battles all the time. I would drop, ammo clips out of my gun by accident because I'd pressed the button by accident. I found myself constantly teleporting, and you can teleport by pressing back on the thumbstick on the Oculus touch controllers. And so I would press back and sort of point to where I want to go, and I could zip to different places, or I could zip up ladders or zip down from a greater height, and you could zip down to the floor. But that same thumbstick is also used. You'd press in on the thumbstick and then move your hand around in different ways to activate the different weapons or gadgets that you might have in your hand. And so consequently, I was changing weapons and zipping forward and bashing myself into walls, or launching myself off of a ledge down into the floor where there'll be a bunch of swarming bad guys all come and get me. There are definitely moments where you do feel badass, and I had that elation, and it was wonderful. But then there are also moments of sheer terror where you just feel so clunky and clumsy.
Oh no. Oh no.
I guess what I'm saying is that I play shooters and survival horror type games, which this is kind of a hybrid of, that are a little more fun for me to play than this game was. Less immersive, less, about the experience of strapping on a headset and feeling like I'm in the world like I am in this game. But there are games where I just sit back and I relax and I'm into the experience, into the gameplay, and hours go by and I just love it. In this game, hours do go by and I love moments, but there are also a lot of frustrating moments that are part and parcel with VR to begin with, because we're not quite there. It does show off what VR can do and can be, and it's a full game and it's worth every penny of its asking price. I've just played games that are more fun to play than this, and more challenging than this, and more, gameplay-wise. This is a challenging game because I'm trying to deal and grapple with the idiosyncrasies of the VR recreation of a reality that I am familiar with, which is reality, which I think is reality. I think this is real. I think we're not in a simulation. So I'm split. I know now, after playing this amazing VR game, that I like VR games that are a little bit more, I think a little more bite-sized, or if they're massive and expansive, they have, a little bit more like Asgard's Wrath. They are a little bit more sort of take your time, and here's a parsed out cool game element that you can try for a little while. Now let's completely flip the script, and now you can try this huge different game experience. Half-Life does do that. Half-Life Alyx does do that, where you have your moments of breath, and there's all these little mini games for all the things that you got to unlock and all that stuff. But at its core, it's a shooter fused with a survival horror experience, and I've had more fun with that. So the VR stuff that I still think really shows off the accessibility and the immediacy of this medium is still games like Pistol Whip and Beat Saber. And I'm not saying that those games are necessarily better than this game. They're just games that I have more fun playing and getting lost in for a little while in VR than I honestly did playing huge chunks of time in Half-Life Alyx. And I did really dig this game, and I will never forget playing this game. And I think it's as an amazing an accomplishment as Half-Life 1 was and Half-Life 2 was, and it's a worthy addition to the Half-Life franchise. Absolutely. It's just that it's also in competition, not just with other VR experiences that I've had, but also other shooters and other survival horror type of experiences that I've had. It makes you want that next step. You know, it really made me want a tetherless experience. I felt incredibly constrained, not just because I don't have the largest open area to be able to play this game. I could have set it all up upstairs and sort of taken over a living room in my house, but I didn't really want to do that. I do most of my gaming in here. And for the most part, VR gaming in my basement has been fine, but this was a game that really screamed out to me that I want that next step. It's an intense game, and it's filled with lots of really frightening and fearful moments. So consequently, there's a lot of jump kind of snapping over and freaking out about different things, and that tether was always getting in my way. I was tangled up in it all the time, and I felt like I was moving in sort of grander motions and around my space. I would find myself sort of coiled up and looking in a totally different direction than I thought I was. And so being tethered was a disappointment. And the other thing that really affected me as well is that there's such a great kind of emphasis on the physics-based gameplay of this title. You are fully interacting with objects and pulling levers and pushing things, but there's no tactility, there's no weight. And we're so close. Like, I remember reviewing Half-Life 2 originally and saying that I could feel the light. It was so well crafted. I could feel the light on my body as I played the game and worked my way through the world. And that existed again in this game, but it's taken to another level because you are Alyx Vance. You are in City 17. You are fully in these moments, and you've got, antlions coming to you, and you've got Combine soldiers, everybody's coming at you, and you feel like you're right there, except that the tactility isn't there. So when you pick up a jar or a bottle of wine and you're trying to distract a monster that can't see but can hear very well, and you throw the wine, you feel like the energy of throwing something works, but not the picking up of that object, not the heft of that object. And when you're pulling and pushing levers and pressing buttons, it feels like holograms, It feels like you're pushing through things. And I really felt that this time, because otherwise the illusion is so good and so solid, and we get the haptic feedbacks on the Oculus touch controllers, and they're phenomenal. And this technology that we've been working up towards, and up to this level of fidelity in the experience, has all been wonderful. But this is the first game where I'm like, yeah, we got a ways to go, like, as immersive and wonderful as this experience is, we still need to kind of take some massive leaps to really believe that we're in this world. But still, and I know I'm repeating this, it is a wonderful accomplishment, and there should be nothing stopping you from adding this to your VR catalog. But I've played more fun games than Half-Life Alyx, including the previous Half-Life games. And that was kind of a shock. I mean, I would be in the middle of Half-Life Alyx, and I'd say, I kind of wish I'd be playing The Division 2 right now. And I know that might completely offend some of you out there, some of you that love Half-Life, that love VR, that love this title, but I can't help what I was feeling, So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, and it was between 8.5 and 9, but I think it's a 9.